Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unstoppable Mindset. And today is kind of a fun one because I get to talk to another author. One of the things that I participate in and have done for a little while are book fairs, including virtual book fairs. And our guest today, Lengling and I were both on a virtual book fair just a couple of weeks ago, talking about our books and this and that and all the other stuff. And I made it really clear that I'm always looking for good podcast guests, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. And of course, then Kim said, well, not unless you're going to be on my podcast too. So we are going to reciprocate next week. So I actually had a message, an email yesterday from someone who wanted me to come on their podcast to talk about disabilities. And then before I responded, they sent a second letter saying, you do understand we don't pay for podcast guests or anything like that, which I never expected to have to deal with anyway. But I wrote back and I said, well, I'm sorry, I do charge. And the charge is that you have to be on, if you want me on your podcast, then you got to be on my podcast too. So it's fun to tease. But anyway, Kim, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset after all that.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I think it's going to be fun doing a podcast swap.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun to do that, and it's kind of neat, and we get to know each other better and all that. And next year when we have the book fair, we can always team up on other people because we'll know each other better.
That's right. That
Yeah,
is right. And
yeah,
those book fairs, they're fun. I enjoy doing those.
they are, and I think the video of it is now out, so it's pretty cool that it is there and is available. So, well, I want to again thank you for coming on and chatting. It's always fun. And as I explained, our podcasts are conversations. So let's converse and go from there. I'd love to start by learning kind of maybe about the early Kim growing up and all that stuff.
Early Kim
The
grew up
early Kim, a long time
yes,
ago in a
it's a
galaxy
long,
far,
long
far
time
away.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I get that song stuck in my head as soon as I hear
American
that
Pie, huh?
long, long time
Time
ago.
ago. Yeah.
Um, okay, well, I grew up in a small country town, and I think my graduating class had 72 people total. And it was just, I'm glad I grew up where I did and how I did in the country. I grew up playing outside, and I still play outside every day, 50 some years later. But yet growing up in a small town, everybody knows each other, which is wonderful, and everybody knows each other, which can be kind of crappy too sometimes.
Well, there's the other song, Everybody Knows Your Name. Anyway,
That's
yeah.
right. Oh yeah, from Cheers.
Yeah,
We're just going to keep on breaking
we
into
are. We're
song.
we're doing great.
But yeah, I grew up in a small town, and I'm very appreciative of the small town, I guess, I don't know, morals and ethics that I learned growing
Hmm.
up. And I've tried very hard when raising my own daughter, who is now married and has her own daughter. I tried and worked hard to instill those same type of values within her, and I think I did a pretty good job. But I liked how I grew up, and then I left my small town right after graduation and went into the military,
Ooh, okay.
and thinking, I'm
Different
going to get out.
town.
Oh yeah, I'm going to get out of this small town and I'm going to see the world, by golly. And it's, it's an eye opener. Because I didn't go to college, so I don't know that. I don't have that experience. I went into the military, and that's an eye opener. It's just wham, you are no longer a small town Kim.
No. Yeah,
You are now a spoke in the wheel, and you don't even have a name,
yeah.
and you're going to be rebuilt into something different. And I am truly thankful, actually, for my military experience. I feel everybody should have to be in it for at least 12 months. It teaches you so much about discipline, self-awareness, leadership, skills that we can all use as we grow. And, yeah, that's kind of my younger self in a small nutshell.
How long were you in the military?
4 years.
Okay. Now, the small town you grew up in, was that in Pennsylvania?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
Yep,
You're
grew up
you're
surrounded by farm fields and cows and deer and everything else, all the critters and all that. I love it. And I still live in the same type of area, not far from my small town that I grew up in,
ah.
and still get to enjoy all of the nature, all of the critters that come through. And just, I had a black bear come through the other day, Michael.
Ooh.
Yeah. Woo
Well,
wee.
and did you have a good conversation with the bear?
No, I didn't chat.
Didn't want to do that, huh?
No. No, it's interesting. I've lived where I'm at now for, gosh, just shy of 30 years. And I've seen bear tracks out there when I'm walking with my dog, but I've never actually come face to face with the actual bear. It was caught on a trail cam, and
Mm.
my neighbors sent it to me and said, "Hey, this guy's going through your backyard at 4:30 this morning." And I'm like, "Oh boy."
I don't know whether you can ever make friends with a bear or not.
I'm not going to try, I don't think.
Yeah,
They're kind of big.
they are kind of big. I suppose if they make the initial overture and they're friendly about it, that's one thing, but probably going the other way is a little bit more risky.
Yeah, yeah, I would probably just not want to try.
Yeah.
Just, they're 700 and up pounds. They're big. They're big.
Well, and then there's always a moose, which gets even bigger.
And see, we don't have moose where I'm at.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've never seen one of those in person either, but I always thought, well, you see online and stuff just how big they are. They're so tall.
yeah. And
It's
again,
amazing.
they're probably not the most friendly creatures.
Oh, they're not. See, I don't know anything about moose because we don't have them in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to try to meet one, but I don't know whether that would be a good idea or not. So
I don't either.
if somebody else tells me that they have a moose that I could meet, I would believe them. But until that happens, I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah, not something to worry about, I don't think.
Same with a bear.
That's right.
Now, on the other hand, I know your dog's name is Dexter,
Yeah.
and I wonder what Dexter would think of a moose or a bear close up.
I'm not sure because he's a pretty big dog. He's not huge, but he's a bigger dog. And there are certain times when we're out in the evening because it's pitch black. I mean, I'm out in the country, so there's
Yeah.
no lights out here. So it's pitch black out there. So I have a flashlight and he has a collar on that lights up.
Ah.
And there are times when he will stop, and I call it his big boy stance because he stops and his whole body just stiffens up and he's staring at the woods.
Mm.
Now, he can see stuff I can't,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And so I sit there and I flash the flashlight back through there because I carry a very powerful flashlight with me, so it lights up everything. And then when I see two yellow eyes staring at me from the woods, I'm never really sure what it might be. And I watch what Dexter's doing.
Yeah.
And there are times where he will put himself in front of me. And then there's times where he comes and he will bump my leg with his head and then turns and starts running back to the house. Like,
Mm.
not staying out
Let's
here, get back to
not
the house.
stay out here. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been
No.
interesting to watch I follow his lead when it's dark outside and we're outside. I follow his lead.
Smart move. What kind of
Yeah.
dog is Dexter?
He is a Belgian Malinois Mastiff mix.
Oh, so he's a big one.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Not huge. He's about 80 pounds, but he's a
All
good
right.
sized dog.
Bigger than my black lab guide dog Alamo, who's about 63 pounds.
Oh, okay. Labs are
But
wonderful.
but
Labs are
again,
awesome.
but again, it's all about trust, and I would trust Alamo's instincts any day, and do. Um,
No, of
and I
course,
think
yes. Yeah.
but it isn't just the normal guiding, but just in general his behavior. I observe it pretty closely, and I think it's an important thing to do because, as you said, they tend to see a whole lot of things that we don't necessarily see.
Right. Right. No, yeah. Even with my other dog, Digger, prior to Dexter, Digger was about 105 pounds. He was a pretty big dog, real tall and lean and long. He was very protective of me.
Uh-huh.
And he would always have to be touching me or in front of me. And I took
Mm.
him everywhere with me. We were always out in public. And he was always, if someone would approach, he would let them know. I would follow his lead. He wouldn't ever growl, but he would show his teeth like a scary smile.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay, we're not going any further. I'm not going to interact with this person. And then other times he would just come and kind of nudge me and his tail would start wagging. I'm like, okay, this person's probably okay then. It
Yeah.
was very, dogs or animals, period, are just amazing in their instincts.
Well, I've been pretty blessed that Alamo has not yet met a stranger. But also, we haven't really encountered anyone that would be a really mean, nasty person. And I have seen some dogs who do sense that very well. My first guide dog was a golden retriever. He was 64 pounds. And when we were in college, and I wrote about it in my new book, Live Like a Guide Dog, in college in our first year, we were at UC Irvine. It was a very open, somewhat rural campus, just in terms of what was around us in Orange County, which is not so rural anymore. But people would bring their dogs to campus and they would just let the dogs roam while they went to class, and then they'd find them at the end. And a bunch of dogs just all congealed, if you will, into a pack. And they would go around together. And one day they decided that they were going to come after Squire and me. They were behind us, and as they got closer, they were growling. And Squire was doing his job of guiding, but all of a sudden he jerked and actually jerked the harness out of my hand. I still held his leash, but he completely jerked away, and literally, as it was described, because somebody else was watching it, he jerked, leaped up, turned around, and went down on all fours facing these dogs and started growling. And it
Oh,
just completely caught them off guard, and they just slunk away. But I've never seen a dog do that before, and I haven't seen a dog do that since. And Squire, of all dogs, a golden retriever, for heaven's sakes. But
right. Yeah, they're usually just friendly, friendly, friendly.
yeah, but he knew what he was doing, and
Yeah,
he dealt with them.
that's awesome.
Well, so
I
you,
just love dogs.
oh yeah, well, and we have a cat here. So my wife passed away 2 years ago, so it's me, dog, and cat. And
Quite the trio you have going on then,
no,
huh?
we all communicate very well, and they like each other. And I would not have it any other way. I would not want a guide dog that was in any way antagonistic toward cats. Now, now,
No, that
Al-
wouldn't work well.
now Alamo doesn't chase Stitch. Um, Stitch has claws. I think Alamo is smart enough that he understands that. But they do rub noses and they play and they talk, so it works out all right. And every so often, Stitch will steal Alamo's bed, and poor Alamo doesn't know what to do with himself because he can't lay on his bed because the cat's there, and he won't try to make her move. I think a couple times they both have been on the bed, but mostly not.
Yeah, yeah. My dog, unfortunately, he's like a single animal type dog.
Uh
It can only be him, and the neighbor's cats. Sometimes, if they end up in my yard, he gets them up in a tree.
huh.
So he's got a very big prey drive for anything smaller than him.
We had a dachshund once. It was a miniature dachshund,
Oh,
and he treated a cat one day before my brother and I went off to high school for the day. And this cat was up in the tree. We came home, and Pee Wee was still barking at this cat up in the tree. The cat was up in the tree, sound asleep, not worried about anything.
not
And this
paying attention.
and this dog didn't know when to shut up. Anyway, it was kind of funny. Well,
Dogs are amazing. My dog, when he's treed raccoons, all kinds of stuff. Anything smaller than him, he takes off after. He
ah,
does have quite the prey drive, and I think that's the Belgian Malinois coming out in him.
yeah,
Pretty sure that's that part. And I've not been able to get him to stop that. But I'm in the country, and
yeah,
you
that's
know,
okay.
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Well, so did you see much of the world when you were in the military?
I was actually all stateside, interestingly
Oh,
enough. Yeah.
well, you saw the country then.
I did. I saw some of the country. So yeah, it's an experience that I'm glad that I had.
What did
I'm
you
glad.
do?
I did Morse code actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny, years ago, I ran into, because this is quite some time ago, and it was years ago, I ran into a couple of younger Navy guys at a gas station. They were filling up their car. And I, of course, went up and thanked them for their service. And I had just come from a funeral. So I was in a military funeral, and I was part of the honor guard at that time. So I was in my honor guard uniform. And they're like, well, thank you for your service. What branch were you in? And we're just chit chatting, like folks do. And they said, well, what did you do? What was your MOS? And I told them, and they looked at each other and their cheeks got red. And I said, what's so funny? And they said, oh, ma'am, we don't use Morse code anymore. And I went, oh, well, my goodness, when did they stop using
Yeah.
it? And the one kid, and they were kids, they were like probably 18 to me anyway. They were,
Yeah.
at the time, 18, 19 years old. And the one looked at the other and they said, well, wait a minute. No, no, we did use it that one time. Now, remember, they were in the Navy and they
Yeah.
were on deployment out in the ocean, sea, wherever. And they said, no, no, remember that one time that old guy, he did use Morse code. We had to use it because some part of the electrical went out. I looked at them and I went, when you say old guy,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? And their faces turned so red. And the one kid, he goes, oh, ma'am, he must have been at least, oh, geez, 37. And at that time, I was like 41. And I just started laughing and I said, well, he wasn't really all that old, you guys. But so, yeah, that was
So what do
interesting.
they use now that they don't use Morse code?
I honestly don't know. I think everything is more electronic, and
Yeah, I mean, I
it's been
figured that.
so long since I've been in. It's been a while. It's been a decade or few.
Well, I learned Morse code to get my ham radio license, and I still remember it. And it still is a means of communications that can sometimes break through when voice and other things don't come through very well.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, yeah, and I don't remember a lot of it. Um, Probably just because I was so sick of hearing it. I actually don't remember a lot of it, but if needed, I could
Oh yeah.
brush up on it.
So how fast were you able to receive code?
We had to, we had to pass a certain, what was it, 22?
22 words a minute? Okay.
I think we had to go 20, I think it was 22 in training when we were in tech school in order to progress. I think it was 22. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
fast for people who don't realize when all you're listening to is did it.
Yep.
I mean, and going 22 words a minute, it just sounds like
I went a friend of mine who was also a ham operator and I were talking one day and he was telling me about this kid that he had met on the air and they were both doing code and he decided that since this kid was a kid that he would play a trick on him and he slowly started speeding up how fast he was sending the code and I don't know how fast he got to and then the kid said, oh, you want to play that game? And he just started going at like about 60 or 65 words a minute, which means he was probably using an electronic key or a bug, but I don't know.
right. Because how would you do that with your fingers, really?
It would be hard. But anyway, this kid was doing it, and the guy went, okay, you got me.
You win.
So
Yeah,
you,
it's amazing. I mean, it truly is amazing. It's amazing.
yeah. And it's still a very relevant thing to have in the arsenal if you need it ever.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So what did you do when you came back from being in the military for 4 years?
I came back to my small hometown, and didn't do much for a bit. I was kind of a weird. It was wasn't so easy transitioning home
Hmm.
from to being in the military to coming back to the hometown because nothing felt right anymore.
Right. Well, you were in a different world.
Right, and I was a different person.
Yeah.
And so I didn't stick. I didn't stay there very long. I got a job, and then it was a couple years later. I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and we, got married. Got a little place, a little house in a different town and had my daughter and, did that. Became a wife and mom and, did the working and being a wife and a mom and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
So do you still do that?
No, I am divorced.
Well,
My
good for
daughter
you.
is mid 30s and married
Yeah.
and has her own daughter. So I'm actually a brand new grandma
Oh, there you go.
and
But
I
you
am just loving it. I'm loving every second of it.
but you don't
And
have the husband anymore.
no, no, it's me and Dexter, and that's just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fine. And so, well, and that it's I have found out, it's interesting when you're a wife, a mom, you work full time, and then your life completely changes and you're an empty nester, completely empty nest, and it's just you and the dog. You have to find out who you are again.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting for me because I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot who Kim was. So it was an interesting journey to find that out and to find out, what did I even like to do? Because I was always running here, running there, doing this, doing that, family, kids stuff, all of the things, doing all of the things. And then I was, now I had time to figure out, well, what do I like to do? Geez, what did I like to do? you know? So it was interesting. It was interesting the first few years figuring out who I was again and what I liked to do and what makes me, what fulfills me and to reach a point where I'm thriving in that, It was interesting.
And what did you decide that you like to do?
I like writing and
There you go.
I love doing my podcast and volunteering. I volunteer for with my veteran post. Been doing that for over 25 years now, um, helping veterans in need, those folks that might need a little bit of help here and there. And then also it's a Project Support Our Troops, which is a monthly thing we've been doing every month for 24 years,
Mm.
sending care packages to those men and women who are deployed around the globe. So, and that's all done by donations. So that's a lot. It's a lot of my time and a lot of where my heart is helping those folks. So
Yeah.
I've been able
Cool.
to really, you know, put a lot into that, which is very fulfilling.
What made you decide that you really liked writing?
It was years ago. When was it? Oh gosh,
A
close to 20 years. Oh
long
my
time
good, a
ago.
long, long time ago. Uh, about almost 20 years ago, I was asked to give a speech at a local veteran event. And it was a large veteran event. There's about 800 people there. I had never spoken in public before. And I was asked to give a speech. And my step grandfather, so my stepfather, his dad, was the last surviving World War One veteran in my area.
Ooh.
And he passed away in 1997. And I thought, I'm going to talk about him. So I spent quite a bit of time with my stepdad, and we went through his dad's stuff that he had brought home. And I learned all kinds of stuff about him and his time in World War One. And he was the last man of the Last Man's Club.
Mm.
And that was formed in Thiemes, France on Armistice Day. And the mayor of this small village in France had a bottle of wine and came out to the boys of Company B. Literally, they were the boys of Company B from my town, and gave them this bottle of wine in celebration, of the signing of the armistice.
Hmm.
And the guys all decided they weren't going to drink it, they were going to keep it. And as time went on, it would pass to the next comrade. And whoever was the last man standing would be the one that has that bottle of wine, and he would then open it, toast his fallen comrades.
Mm.
So the last man's club is what they called it. And my step grandfather was the last man of the last man's club. And he passed away at the age of 104.
Wow.
And so I shared his story and the story of the last man's club. That was my speech. And it was about a 15-minute speech. And for someone who'd never spoken in public before, and you know this, 15 minutes is a long time. Can be a long time to talk in front of a group of people. And there were television cameras there, and it was overwhelming. But I got up there, the first 2 minutes, my voice was shaking because I was a little nervous. And then I just fell into the story
Hmm.
because it's just a beautiful story. And when I was done, it was there, and there was about 800 people there. It was total silence. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I just blew it. But then there was one person started clapping, and then another, and then the place, like this was an outdoor event, it erupted. They just went crazy, and people were crying. And the local newspaper came up to me. The local newspaper editor came up to me and said, "Would you consider writing an article, about veterans for the paper?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm no writer." And he goes, "Well, who wrote your speech?" And I said, "Well, I did." And he goes, "Well, then you're a writer." And that was the little spark that lit something up in me. Somebody saw something in me that I had never even considered looking for in myself. And so that was the little spark that got me going.
So you hadn't really contemplated writing before then.
No, not at all.
Wow.
And never really, it had never entered my mind. And I started doing these monthly articles, and I was interviewing veterans. And I'm very connected with my local veteran community, and being a veteran myself, the veterans were pretty
Sure.
comfortable talking to me. And I spoke to numerous former prisoners of war. Most of who I interviewed over the years were combat veterans. A lot of them were Vietnam combat veterans,
Hmm.
and hearing their stories. And first off, it was very humbling that they would even share them with me,
Yeah.
because a lot of them won't or don't want to or can't, you
Or
know.
can't. Yeah.
And so for 14 years, I did that each month. And I started getting a following. I'd run into, because they would post a picture with me and my article in the paper each month. And I'd run into people and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you just brought me to tears with that article. And I just so enjoy reading your monthly stuff." And that's when, I didn't know what I was doing. And when I look back at some of those, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Kim, you were such an awful, awful writer." But as time went on, I learned, and then I just started doing some stuff online, finding free courses, and doing what I could, teaching myself a lot of stuff about writing and just how to make it better. And so that's kind of, I rolled with it. I just kept rolling with it. And now that the last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to actually work from home full time now and put a lot more of my time into writing. And I'm still learning. We all learn something. We're still, we're all learning. Hopefully, we're all learning something.
Hopefully.
And so, yeah, hopefully. So I can see how my writing has changed, how my voice has changed, and I just hope I'm better than I was yesterday. That's what I hope each day. I'm a little bit better of a writer than I was yesterday, because hopefully I learned something new.
And that's fair. We have somewhat similar starts in the whole process. So for me, of course, September 11th happened,
Hmm.
and the media got the story. And like about a week and a half after September 11th, I don't remember exactly what day it was. It must have been around the 20th or so of September. Um, but I got a call on the phone, and this guy said he was the pastor of a church, and he had heard about me and asked if I would come and speak at a church service they were going to hold. And I said, "Well, I guess. Tell me more about it." And he said, "Well, we want to hold a church service for all the people who were lost in the World Trade Center who were from New Jersey." I said, "Okay, that seems like it would be a worthwhile thing to do." And so we agreed to do it. And then kind of the last thing I asked him before hanging up was, "How many people are going to be at this service?" And he said, "Well, it's going to be an outdoor service, and there'll be something over 5,000 people."
Oh my goodness.
Now, it's not that I hadn't spoken in unusual situations before, because being in sales, you never know where you're going to be on any given day, from a board of directors of a Wall Street firm to IT people or whatever, but still 5,000 people.
That's a
And
lot.
that's a lot. And when I got there, I also learned that Lisa Beamer was there. Now, Lisa's husband, Todd, was the
Mm-hmm.
guy on Flight 93 who said, let's roll.
Let's roll. Yep.
And Lisa was not an animal lover, but she and Roselle hit it off. And so she really, and Roselle was my guide dog in the World Trade Center. So they had a thing going, which was kind of cool. But um, the speech wasn't overly long. It was only supposed to be about 6 or 7 minutes, and it was. And that is really what got me started down the road of doing public speaking. And then the next year, we were at an event where I met the publisher of the AKC Gazette, and George said, "You should write a book." I said, "I've never thought of writing a book." And it took 8 years to get it done and get the right combination, including someone to collaborate with, because I wasn't really all that familiar with writing. But anyway, we wrote Thunderdog, and it got published in 2011, became a New York Times bestseller. So that was pretty cool. But um, circumstances do offer us opportunities, and it's important to really take them when you can. And so you and I have both done that in various ways.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you look back to see how things unfold.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned that you were in sales. And that's my background, 25 years of sales and marketing. So and well, I'm sure you have too as well, many authors, and a lot of them have some sort of sales or marketing in their background. Have you found that to be true as well?
I have, and especially today, you have to, because the
Well, yeah,
publishers aren't
yeah,
doing nearly as much as they used to promote books, and they want the authors to do a lot more. And I think that the publishers, some of the publishers could do more than they're doing, but because they rely on social media and so on. But there's a lot more to it than that. But unfortunately, that's not what they do. So you cope with what you got.
that's right. That's right. And I found that a lot of the larger publishing houses, and even some of the mid-sized ones, in order for them to even take you on, you have to have a certain number of followers or whatever it is on your combined social media platforms.
Yeah,
And so
and
many authors don't,
don't. And you also
because we're
have to
not we're
make
not
the
all out there being influencers.
Yeah, but you also have to make the commitment to promote. And so
Oh,
we do.
absolutely.
So we do, and it's part of what needs to be done. And I don't mind, and I understand the concept of an author has to be part of what promotes their book. They shouldn't rely totally on the publisher, and that's fine. But I do think that publishers could do more than they do a lot of times to help today. They
Yeah,
think that social media is the thing. Well, it's not the only thing, and you miss out on a lot by just dealing
that's
with social media.
right. That's where a good publicist comes in.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's helpful. But no, yeah, and I enjoy doing but it's almost a full-time job marketing
Oh,
just
it
a
is.
book.
It is.
It's a lot of work. And I'm self-published. I didn't go the traditional publishing route, and knowing, regardless, I would still be doing the same amount of work that I'm doing if I went the traditional route,
Right.
because I'd still have to do a majority, or if not all, of my own promotion, which I don't mind. I enjoy doing that because then I actually get to meet
Yes.
a lot of interesting people,
And
you
that's
know.
important. And that's
It is.
important.
It is. And the people that have been put in front of me, like yourself, we made a connection, and now I'm here a guest on your show, and you're going to be a guest on mine. I mean, how cool is that? So, you get to meet people that might have nothing to do with your book. It's just cool to, humanity, to meet other good, decent people is a good thing.
It is by any standard. So
Right.
you primarily today write fiction. So what got you down the road of writing fiction or
I
nonfiction
actually,
rather?
nonfiction.
Nonfiction, not fiction,
Yeah.
nonfiction.
that it was all of the interviewing that I did with the veterans.
Mm.
Keeping to the personal stories. I really enjoyed that. I enjoy it, and being able to not only write the story but pull that emotion from it too. And I found that at first it was somewhat intimidating because I'm thinking, how can I get these in words on paper where people are going to feel what I'm feeling right now listening to this gentleman,
Yeah.
you know? And it just that kind of fascinated me, and that's what made me want to keep on writing and learning how to do it better. And so I just stuck with it. So I've not written anything fiction at
One of,
all.
one of the things that I find is that what makes, I think, good, successful writers, and I'll deal with nonfiction right now, but is to be yourself. So when you're interviewing people, your personal self has to come through, not in an opinion way, but just how you are able to portray the people who you're talking with and interviewing. It comes out so much better if you really can feel it, which is again getting back to your being yourself.
Right. Yes, I think, yeah, being authentic. Just, I don't know if you've had folks on your show that I've had a few that I was the first podcast they were ever on,
Yeah,
and they were quite nervous. And I said, well, before I even hit that record button, I don't mind sitting here chit-chatting for a bit. So, you feel a little bit more at ease. And it just took, without fail, my guests have said, Kim, thank you for being such a welcoming host. And you made this fun. And, because there's no pretense with me,
right.
and I'm come as I am. I'm not all, I don't get all, my hair's not done. I don't have a bunch of makeup on or anything like that. It's, you can't, this is Kim. This is me. This is who I am every day. And, hey, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee. That's how I try and, get my guests at ease, and I'm sure that you've had guests that have probably been kind of nervous. Maybe it's their first time on a show or something.
Yeah, one of the things that I do though, and I really have found that it works very well to do this, is before I have a guest on the actual podcast, I want to sit down with them and have a half hour conversation where we get to know each other. So I insist that anyone who wants to come on to Unstoppable Mindset has to spend some time with me ahead of time. And that way, when I find people who aren't familiar with podcasts, or, they say, well, I'd love to come on, but I don't know what to talk about, we can talk about it, and we can get them to relax and recognize that they do have a story to tell. And what we want to do is to hear their story, and they don't need to worry about being uptight, because there are no set rules that you have to do this or you fail. It's all
Right.
about really enjoying what you do and just being willing to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's an awesome idea, and I know a lot of podcast hosts do that. I have not. I don't know why. I've never really come up with a reason why I haven't had, just that sit down chat 15, 20 minutes prior, maybe a week before the show or whatever.
Yeah.
I've just not done that. I don't know. We usually end up talking 10 to 15 minutes prior to me hitting record.
Well,
Um, I've only had one instance with one guest, and it was a couple years ago, where we did chit chat. And as we were chit chatting, it was that at that point I thought I should probably do pre screening.
yeah.
And we went through with the show, and I pre record everything.
Yeah.
So I did cut it short, and I never published it. That was the one and only time that ever happened. This person never got back to me, never said, when's this going to be out? It was just such an uncomfortable chat. And I was thinking, wow, on paper, this person was a completely different person than when I'm actually
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't in line with anything of what we had discussed. So that was interesting. That's only in 4 years. That's only happened one time. And that was one day when I thought, oh, I really should do pre-screen.
Well, I've had two. Um, One, the we did the podcast, and this person just had no affect to their voice. And as much as I had
Oh,
talked ahead of time about I want to hear your story and all that, he just couldn't tell a story.
oh yeah.
And so that one didn't get published. And then another one I did, and I thought it was a great podcast, but the person said, I absolutely do not want this published. I just decided that I don't want to do it. And um,
I had one like that after we had recorded and everything, and I thought I too
yeah.
and it was like 3 days later because I said, well, it's going to be up and uploaded probably 2 to 3 weeks from now. It's like 2 or 3 days later they said, I've changed my mind. I don't want my story out there at all.
Yeah.
There was
Well,
fear in theirs. There was fear involved
yeah,
in there.
there was clearly fear um, with my person as well.
Oh yeah.
And they got very, very nasty about it when I said, look, it really is a good podcast. So, I'm not gonna I don't want to have people and make people do things they don't want to do. Um, I've had several people who have said, well, I want to hear the podcast before it goes out. And I'll say to that, no, it's a conversation and I don't edit it. So the whole idea is that if there's any editing, it's just to deal with getting noise out of it and all that. But
Right.
normally that doesn't happen. But, and people accept that. But again, it's fear.
Hmm.
But the reality is that I believe everyone has a story to tell. And I believe that everyone, if they're willing to do it, should tell their story because it will show other people that they're not any different and we're all more unstoppable than we think we are. And that's the whole point of the podcast.
No,
Well,
I agree. I agree. 100%.
well, tell me about some of the nonfiction books that you've written. Tell me a little bit about what you've done and so on. I know you've
I
written
just had
some.
one released last week
Yeah.
actually called Nuggets of Hope. And that one has been in the works for a couple years. And it started with not me thinking about turning anything into a book. It just started with the word hope showed up everywhere, everywhere. And I felt very strongly that I was supposed to be doing something with it. And I ended up getting polished stones with the word hope engraved on them and carrying those with me. And I thought, okay, I think I'm supposed to be giving nuggets of hope to people. And, but I wasn't sure how to do that. But I had this very strong nudge that I was meant to be doing this. And so that began a couple years ago. And I would just approach people who I would see, I'm out running errands, doing my thing. And I would just, someone would catch my eye and I would feel very strongly nudged to be like, that person needs a nugget of hope. And I would just approach and say, excuse me, ma'am or sir, I would like to give you a nugget of hope today.
Mm.
And without fail, and I've been doing this for a couple years, so I've been handing out quite a few of my little stones. And without fail, every single person I've approached has put their hand out to accept that nugget of hope. And from a total stranger just coming up to them, it's amazing. And the reactions that I've had have just been, there's been tears, there's been laughter, nervous laughter. There's been funny looks like, who are you, crazy woman, approaching me? Um, I've had people hug me, and I had one older gentleman yell at me in anger and swear at me in Walmart
Mm.
and, ask me very loudly, what the hell did he have to hope for? And, but he took the nugget of hope and put it in his pocket.
Yeah.
And I knew in that moment with that particular gentleman had nothing to do with me.
Hmm.
And he was probably had to have been in his late 80s. So I don't know what was going on in his life, but I do firmly believe, even to this day, that I was meant to be in front of him at that moment in time and give him a nugget of hope. A nugget of hope.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that. And I don't know, when our interaction was done, he was still an angry man. And that's okay. Because I didn't let it land on me because it wasn't supposed to. It wasn't directed at me. And I got in my car and I actually did cry. I sat in my car with my head on my steering wheel, crying for that man because my heart hurt for him. And I thought, what if what if he just lost his wife and he has no idea? And because he was yelling at me about not knowing what uh, dish soap to get. He couldn't find the kind that he needed. And I thought maybe, he had just lost his wife.
Yeah.
And she always used a particular soap and he couldn't find it. And that was what put him over. Maybe he's a full-time caregiver for a family member, maybe a wife, I don't know, Alzheimer's, what have you. Maybe he was just coming off of a very long illness and he's on his own, a widower, whatever. Because he was late 80s at least and looked very, very, very tired. And my heart just hurt. My heart just hurt for
Yeah.
him. And I
Yeah.
thought, you know what? He might have been yelling and swearing at me, and that is perfectly okay. But I'm going to sit here and pray for him. I'm going to pray for peace and for grace to just envelope him, just be covered in it. And maybe when he wakes up tomorrow and he goes to grab all that stuff from the hallway table and put back in his pocket, he'll look down
Oh,
and see
see
that
the
nugget of
nugget.
hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe then it'll be like, oh, or maybe not. Maybe it would be a week, maybe a month, whatever. But I firmly believe in my heart that at some point he was going to see that and it would click.
And you haven't seen him since, I assume.
No, it's a total stranger. I don't know these
Hmm.
people, you
Hmm.
know? And there was one time I got little cards made too because, well, these stones are pretty expensive actually. So I got little cards made too, just tiny little square cards. And it says, share a nugget of hope today. And on the back, it says, the world is a better place because you're in it. And I had some of those because I had forgotten to put stones in my pocket. And I had a couple of those cards in my purse. And I was in a store just picking, doing errands. And I was walking by some sweaters. And I thought, I'm going to put one of these little cards in a pocket of that sweater. And just put it in, didn't think anything of it. Several days later, I got a message through Facebook
Hmm.
from a young lady saying, I don't know if this is the person who left a card in a sweater, but if you are, I want to thank you for leaving this little nugget of hope in that sweater because I've been struggling with my weight for a very long time. And I had an event to attend, and I was looking for a sweater that would help make me feel better. And she didn't notice that little card that said, be a nugget of hope today, the world's a better place because you're in it. She didn't notice it until she was home putting the sweater on again to try it on in front of her mirror. And she said, if the person that I'm reaching right now is the person who left that card, I want to thank you for doing that. And I also want to let you know I'm going to keep this card. And when I feel so led, I'm going to tuck it into a pocket somewhere in a store too. And
Mm.
hopefully someone else will get it and they will receive it as I received mine. And I was just like, oh my goodness. you
You
know,
know, ever since Thunderdog was published, I get emails. They're sporadic somewhat, but I get emails from people who have said how this book inspired or how
mm,
I learned so much. And as far as I am concerned, I am better for all of the comments that I get. I learn from everyone who decides to reach out in one way or another. And I've encountered people in very, very unusual circumstances. I was in Dallas Fort Worth Airport one day, and this guy comes up to me and he said, "You're Mike Hingson. You just wrote Thunderdog, and I want to shake your hand and I want to take you to lunch." And I had time, so we did go to lunch. And I never had met the guy before, um, but he had read Thunderdog, and it obviously made a difference to him. So I think, as I said, every time I hear from someone, I believe it makes me a better person. It teaches me that when we put out words or seeds in the field or whatever you want to call it, that you never know where they're going to plant and thrive. But if that's what I'm supposed to do, then I'm glad I'm doing it.
I feel exactly the same. And I like how you said you were it you said each comment that you get makes you a better person. And
Yeah.
that's so profound. And it's humbling, isn't it, when you get comments like that, or people approach you and say something that, it was inspiring, or that motivated me, or, wow, that's something I really needed. I mean, it's very, for me anyway, it's very humbling. I had an older lady. I was helping her put her groceries in her car. It was just I just randomly saw her, struggling, and I had a nugget of hope in my hand too, of course. So I went up and I, said, I'd like to give you a nugget of hope, and I'd also like to help you put your groceries in your car.
Ah,
And we got done doing that, and she looked down at the nugget of hope in her hand, and she got all teary-eyed and gave me a big hug. And she said, "You are my absolute angel today. You have no idea how much I needed this." And I
yeah.
went, "I'm so grateful that you're the one that's receiving this, and that that you need it." She goes, "But," and I said, "But I am no angel. I am no angel." And she said, she just kind of chuckled and, said, "No, you just have no idea. You have no idea what this means to me today." And I didn't ask because it's none of my business.
Yeah.
I wished her a blessed day, and I went back to my car and I sat there. And that was another time I actually cried. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is what I think I'm supposed to be doing, this random stuff." And it's not random, obviously, but I don't know. It's profound, and it hits you. And I'm sure that's
Yeah.
probably, your book has probably done the same. Your book is a nugget of hope,
Well,
to many people, I'm sure.
I hope it is. I didn't write it to do anything other than to try to encourage people and motivate people and teach
Hmm.
people a little bit. And I guess it's done all of those things, so I can't complain.
No,
And
it's
as long
awesome.
as long as it's doing it, it's great.
And what a beautiful legacy, because that's always going to be out there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you've written or been the lead on a number of anthologies, and I think three of your books are in a series, When Grace Found Me. Tell me about that series.
That was in 2020, actually, when the world shut down.
Yes.
And I was online, and I found an online writers group. It was all women, and the majority of them were from England. And so I was like, the minority being the American. And I met a beautiful lady online, and she had just started up a faith-based publishing company. And so her and I were like, "Hey, let's chat afterwards." And so we set up a Zoom and chatted afterwards for a while. And I said, "I've had this idea. I've got a few stories in my head, but I would love to get other people's stories,
Hmm.
about, when Grace found them." And we were just chatting about Grace. And she said, "Well, let's figure out how to make this work." And so her and I actually together started those When Grace Found Me series. And we asked a few people, and then it kind of snowballed, because it was just going to be one book, 20 people, done. Once it reached 20, and we're like, "Oh, this, we've got enough for a book. They're 1,500 words each. The stories, they're beautiful. Let's do it." But then word of mouth got out somehow online, and people kept coming forward. "Well, I would like to participate, and I have a story." And it went from one book to three books, and 20 co-authors in each book. And we published all of those within 12 months.
Wow.
It was so much work. It was so much work. But those stories, oh my goodness, the comments that we got after they were out, and she just started her tiny little publishing company. And it was just amazing. What an amazing experience. And then 2 years ago, I truly enjoy bringing folks together to share their stories. And I enjoy, collaborating and coordinating all of these. And so the last two have been Paw Prints on the Couch and Paw Prints on the Kitchen Floor. And those are anthologies all about pets.
Hmm.
People are sharing their stories about their pets, and how they've enriched their lives, or changed their lives, or saved their lives. And it's just rewarding to me. And it's also fun to give folks that maybe have never written before that chance to say, "I'm published in a book." Because that's pretty exciting stuff for folks. And some folks are like, "I've never aspired to be a writer, and I don't want to be, but I do want to share my story in this book."
Yeah.
So it's been fun. And oh my goodness, I learned how to publish.
Yeah.
That's, like I said, I like to learn. So I've learned so much about publishing and formatting, and how to corral all the people that
Yeah.
are involved in the book, you know.
Have you converted any of them to audiobooks?
No, and I need to do that. I just don't have the funds to do that at this time. That's not something that's cheap. And I'm not set up to do it myself. I don't have the right, I have the equipment, but I don't think it would be the quality that I want it to be if I did it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't have the funds to do that. And I would love to do it for the Paw Prints books, both of them for sure. And I'm considering do because everybody's going, you have two. When's the third one coming out? And I said I wasn't really planning on. And they're going, you have two. You have to do at least three, and then make
Yeah.
it a series. So I was actually talking to a couple people today about it, and they're encouraging me to do a third one. So I probably will, so that would come out next year sometime, but I don't know. I would like to I would like to get audiobooks of all of them. I just have to reach a point where I'm able to do that and make it so
Well,
it's professionally done.
yeah, yeah. AI is getting better, but I'm not sure that it's really there yet for doing recording of audiobooks unless you've got a whole lot of equipment and can do various
Right.
things with
And
it.
I've played around listening to some of the different voices and stuff, and the inflection just isn't there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Some of them sound pretty good, but you don't get the correct pauses. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean. It just you can tell it's like, oh, that sounds pretty good, and then you're like, ah, no, right there, nope, that just blew it.
Yeah. I agree and I fully understand. Well, so you've written nonfiction. Is there a fiction book in your future?
I have one in my head, and it's been in there for several years, and it's been getting louder.
Ah,
So, and I've talked to other fiction writers, and they're going, okay, when you've got characters in your head and they're getting louder, that means you are supposed to be writing this book.
yeah.
So this year, and we're almost done with this year, the characters, and it's kind of fantasy kind of ish, young adult ish. I don't even know what it is yet. But I've got the characters in my head. I know what they look like. I know what they sound like. And, there's wood sprites are involved, wood,
Well,
spr- wood sprites and animals are involved, heavily involved. They are the main characters of the story. Um, so yeah, every once in a while I sit down and I'll write, maybe 400 or 500 words of it, and then I walk away. But I
well,
want to. They're getting louder. The characters are getting louder, so I need to sit down and just go, Kim, let's get going.
no, that's not the way it's going to work. What's going
I
to happen
know.
is you're going to sit down and they're going to say, Kim, we're writing this book. All
Right.
those characters are going to write the book.
Right. They're going to tell me what they're doing and what
Yeah,
they're saying. That's for
yeah.
sure.
And you're going to do it or they're going to get even louder.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I remember the first time I was talking to a fiction author and they said, my characters got so loud in my head. I didn't quite grasp what they were saying, but I found it fascinating. And now I understand what they were saying.
Yeah, yeah.
And I joking, I laugh. It's not joking. I laugh about it because they're like, well, what do you have one character that's louder than the others? I said, yes. And it's a female and she's Irish.
There you are.
So she's yelling in her Irish accent.
You better listen. I
Yeah.
I haven't had that happen to me yet, so I haven't done a fiction book, but I'm sure the time is going to come, and we'll have fun with it. But
And I wasn't expecting it to happen. It's there. There it
yeah,
is.
exactly right, and that's been the case with everything that I've done, especially over the past 23 years, and I think it will happen more. I never thought I was going to be doing a podcast, but when the pandemic occurred, I started to learn about it and then began working with Accessiby, which is a company that makes products that help make the internet more inclusive and accessible for people with a lot of disabilities. And they asked me to do a podcast because I said I was learning about podcasting. And suddenly I've been doing Unstoppable Mindset now for over 3 years, and it's a lot of fun.
But that's how my podcast started, was in 2020.
Yeah,
We have an awful lot in common, Michael.
yeah. Well, we should collaborate on books then. That'll be the next thing.
Absolutely. I am open for that.
Works for me.
Awesome. You tell me when and where, and I'll sit down and chat. We can brainstorm about it and
I'm
see.
I'm ready any old time.
Me
And
too.
and there you have it, friends, the beginning of a new relationship and another book that will come out of it. And you heard it here first on Unstoppable Mindset.
That's right. It's now thrown out there.
It is out there for the world to see and hear. Well, I want to really thank you for being with us. We've been doing this an hour, and it's just has gone by like grease lightning. And now we have next week on your podcast, and that's going to be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
looking forward to it. Really
Me
looking
too.
forward to it.
Me too. And I'm sure that Alamo is going to want to listen in over here. He's over here on his bed, and if I close the door, when I always close the door when I do the podcast, because otherwise the cat will invade, and Stitch wants attention when she wants attention.
Yeah,
But if I close the door and Alamo is not in here, then he wants attention, or at least he wants in. So I
right.
always have to let Alamo in, but Stitch doesn't need to be here. I've done one podcast where she sat on the top of my desk chair during the whole podcast.
I've had guests where their cat, they said, "Do you mind?" I said, "No, I don't mind. I love animals." Their cat, the entire time, was walking across the desk in front of them the whole time. So the tail, the entire time, was just going back and
Yeah,
forth, back and forth. It was so comical. But then, you're just like, we're just two people sitting at a kitchen table having coffee. That's how I like to
that's
look
right.
at it.
That's right. Well, Stitch will come in occasionally, and if I bring her in and I put her on the back of the desk chair, she'll stay there. And so she likes that. If she gets restless, then I've told her you can't be too restless and you can't one out in the middle of a podcast. You're either here or you're not. Mostly she's agreeable.
I
Well,
love it.
I want to thank you again for being here. This has been fun. And one of these days we'll get out to Pennsylvania and visit, or you can come out this way somehow. But I want to thank you for being here. If people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Easiest way is to just go to my website, which is my name, kimlenglingauthor.com. That's KIMLENGLING author.com. You can find out what I'm doing, what's coming up, and all the messages go through my dog Dexter because he is my office manager. So he will make sure I get all of my messages.
Yeah, as it should be.
That's right.
Well, cool. Well, I want to thank you all for listening to us today. Love to hear your thoughts about the podcast, and we would appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so by email at michaelhi, at accessibe.com, or go to our podcast page, which is www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And Michael Hingson is spelled michaelhingson.com/podcast. And also, I would ask if you know of anyone who you think ought to be a guest on our podcast, Kim, you as well. Don't ever hesitate to provide introductions. Always looking for more people with stories to tell. And as I said earlier, I think everyone has a story to tell. We just haven't got to that many people yet, but we'll keep working on it. But again, I want to thank you, Kim, for being here. This has been fun and really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a blessing to be your guest today. I truly enjoyed it.